everyone, I'm Roger with Williamson Foundation Repair. Since 1985, the most trusted name in foundation repair. We're here at a pier and beam home in Richardson, Texas, and we're going to talk to you a little bit about pier and beams, the difference between them and slabs, and what it takes to work on them. Okay, so one of the ways that you can know a house is a pier and beam when you drive up is the fact that you usually have a front porch and you'll have to walk up several steps to get to the porch. However, a lot of slabs have that as well. The main way you can tell a house is a pier and beam is right here. This is called a vent, a foundation vent, and it actually allows airflow to go under the house. There should be several on each side of the house. It allows airflow to go under there to dry out the soils, because everything underneath here is wood, and wood and water do not get along, and water wins all the time. Every time. So we don't want water going under a pier and beam house. That's a really bad thing. But even with proper drainage, humidity, moisture gets underneath this house, and we don't want it to get trapped. So that's what these vents are for, is to allow air to flow through so that we can dry out the soils, dry out the space, and not end up with wood rot, warpage, mold, mildew, all of those other things that can create significant damage. So in Texas, we typically don't ever recommend covering these vents. A lot of people cover them in the wintertime. It's okay if we actually have a freeze coming to cover these vents. They make a plate that goes on them to cover them. And you can do that in the wintertime during freezes. But we don't recommend leaving them on all winter, because our winters are typically wet and not freezing. And so we want that to dry out. We are under a pier and beam home. This is a pier. This is a concrete pier. It was drilled prior to the home being built. You can see them about every 6 feet, 8 feet on center is average. And on top of these piers is what's called the beam. It's a large wood beam, usually built up with multiple pieces, going all the way from one side of the house to the other. And there are typically several of them on each row of piers. As you can see, we're actually working on this house. These beams were installed by the builder laying on their side, which is not correct. They need to be upright, like this one is. For some reason, they decided to take those and lay them down. So we are in correcting that. Also, they used wood shims, even though they do have flashing of metal that goes all the way across. That's called a termite shield. Termites can work their way up and into the wood, so the termite shield is there to prevent that. However, above the termite shield, between the beam and the pier, they've used pieces of wood 2x4 as shims. That's really not proper, because that wood can compress. So we are going to replace all of these wood shims, like you can see here, with solid steel shims, which can't compress. Termites can't eat them. So basically they're there forever. They won't move. So that's what we're doing under this house. But this is how a pier and beam house is done. You can see all the plumbing pipes that are easy to get to. This is a water pipe, insulated, probably hot water. There's our guys down there doing some work, getting this all corrected. So some of the things about a pier and beam house that are great. First of all, if you ever want to remodel this home, it's really easy to do, because you can go down underneath it and you can literally move plumbing fixtures, you can move pipes, you can move wires, cables, internet, telephone. Anything that you want to move in this house is really easy to just crawl underneath, and you can move it, you can add more, you can do whatever. That's really difficult to do on a slab foundation. Easy on a pier and beam. The other thing is, assuming you keep these things in good shape, good drainage away from the house, don't let it get flooded under there, then typically, in most cases, all you're going to need to do is go underneath the house about once every 8 to 10 years and just do a little bit of tweaking of elevations. Now, it's normal over time. The wood tends to compress a little bit on the high weight areas, the load bearing areas. And so about every 10 years or so, you'll need to go under and just kind of tweak it a little bit. But that's easy. It's inexpensive to do. So as long as we don't get water underneath this house and we don't have a lot of plumbing leaks or anything, the wood stays in good shape, these things will last forever with just a little bit of maintenance year in, year out. There's a lot of labor involved in working on a pier and beam because it's such tight working conditions. And more often than not, what we see is that we have to go in and replace wood members. So we're having to take out the wood that's supporting the house and replace it with new wood while the house is still on top of it. That can be challenging, and especially when you have to do it in a space about that wide from ground to wood in the dark, and it just makes it very difficult. So pier and beam seems like it would be a lot easier to work on. Oftentimes it's much more complicated because the amount of wood that's required and just the tight working spaces. It can often be a much bigger, much longer job and have a lot of labor cost involved. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Roger Williamson with Williamson Foundation Repair. Be sure to like our Facebook page and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And please let us know what questions you have about foundations, foundation repair and maintenance, drainage systems. Give us whatever you got. We love answering your questions.